Rebecca Jeschke is Media Relations Director and a Digital Rights Analyst for the Electronic Frontier Foundation. The foundation is currently working to stop the Stop Online Piracy Act, Stop Online Piracy Act, that vested interest politicians are attempting to ram through Congress with as little public participation as possible. Rebecca Jeschke, welcome to the Global Freedom Report. I would have given you a more encompassing introduction, but frankly, I didn't have any biomaterial from which to cull it. But it's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into the Stop Online Piracy Act, I'm just curious. In the material I did have, you worked on a slime line up in Alaska. What exactly is a slime line?
Well, where I was working, it was actually high-quality salmon. So the fish came to us. It was caught by trolling. So the fish came to us already gutted, and I worked on the line to help pull the rest of the guts out and drain the veins, such like that, before it went to the head or the person who cut off the heads.
Oh, so it's kind of a serious stuff. Okay, slime line is a slime line. All right.
Slime line is a slime line, and then
sure
it would go into the
fishermen out in
freezer.
the audience are going, oh, that's obvious. Forgive me, I didn't know. I also was curious. You were an English teacher in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Now, I know this is a bit off topic, but can you comment on what I call the stupidification of the American people? Many people consider the U.S. education system to be the worst in the developed world, with ample justification. Do you have any thoughts, having been to other countries and actually been a teacher, do you have any thoughts on the current state of education in America?
Well, I have to say I've never worked in the U.S. education system. But the one thing that I was extraordinarily impressed by in the Dominican Republic is that everyone knew how important it was to be able to speak two languages. Lots of people who were affluent enough told their children they could only watch television in English. So they were really able to be fluent in two languages, and it was something that I wished that I had.
So you mean that they were learning English through television?
Oh, that's a lot of what they were doing, yeah.
Oh, my. I hope it wasn't MTV. That's all I can say.
No. But, they did know that they had to be part of a global community and were learning to speak English along with, along with their other tasks. So that was good.
Well, but I understand that you haven't actually directly worked with the American educational system, just in terms of as an ordinary citizen. And you watch TV, you see what ads are like, you see what people are like. Since you have a perspective as a teacher, does it just strike you one way or the other? What's happening in America?
It's hard to say. As I said, I have not, interacted with the, U.S. education system much. I don't have kids, so I haven't seen that. I know that when I was growing up, I felt like my public school education was quite good. But I know that things are always different from community to community. It's one of the U.S. education system is so decentralized that things are very different from community to community, to city, to school to school.
Was in the Dominican Republic, do they have a central or a community-based education system?
Well, I was actually working in the private education system, so I wasn't sure how the public schools worked, but certainly in the private, the private schools were really quite good.
What is the Stop Online Piracy Act, and how and why does it represent a threat to freedom on the Internet?
Sure. SOPA, as they're calling it, is the latest attempt to create a Internet blacklist registration, a way to create a system for censoring websites. There are a couple of these bills that are working their way through Congress. SOPA is the most recent one in the House. The Protect IP Act is going through the Senate. They are purported to block illegal content and copyright infringement and things like that. But the ramifications are much bigger. It would really interfere with the way that the Internet works and allow for mass censorship of all sorts of kinds of content.
Well, now, how would that come about? My understanding, and I have not read the proposed legislation, but I have read some summaries on it, and I understand that the one may not reflect the other. But I understand that part of the legislation is authorizing the Department of Injustice to go seek court orders against websites that are accused of enabling or facilitating copyright infringement. Now, my great concern comes when I read the word accused. Is that all that it takes? That all I have to do is have an accusation and they can get a court order? Is that what it's about?
Yes, and in many cases you don't actually need a court order. In many cases you just have to allege something and send notice to other companies, and that could get the site censored off the internet and put them in a kind of a limbo where they have to jump through a bunch of hoops in order to get back on. So there are a number of problems.
Let's throw this out as an example, okay? What you just said, how would that come about? You got company X out there, okay?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's say, company X decides that a product on Etsy, do you know that website?
No, I'm not familiar with it. Even if I was, maybe the others aren't. So.
Yeah, Etsy is an interesting website where people, it's kind of a craft mart where people, where people sell their own handcrafted items. It would be like going to a crafts fair or an arts fair, but it's on the internet.
Okay.
So it's everything from earrings to, Christmas crafts that are sold, directly. But it's a marketplace for that. It's a really nice way for small businesses to market their materials without having to set up their own website and to do searches and stuff. Thousands and thousands of items are sold on Etsy. It is understandable that maybe some people who participate in Etsy perhaps included a copyrighted image without permission. That's wrong and that's illegal, but it's not really possible for Etsy to look at everything before it goes up. The site simply wouldn't work the way that it does now if they had to vet every single item that went up. Under this law, if someone complained about copyright infringement, the whole site would be in danger of being taken down because of the complaint.
Now wait a minute.
But also,
okay, let me ask you: I would assume that site. What is the site again? Etsy.
Etsy, ETSY.
ETSY, Etsy. Okay. I would assume that sites such as Etsy would have within their terms and conditions some kind of disclaimer. We cannot be held responsible for everything that's up here. We do our best to police what's up here, but it's just not possible. Therefore, the posters are responsible. Something like that.
Yeah,
Isn't there something of that sort?
Yeah, absolutely. And normally, sites with what we call user-generated content, so everything from YouTube to Etsy to Flickr, places where people, contribute their own content, there usually is a place for people to report illegal activity on there. They usually have very robust systems for that as well. And it's important to note that if these companies, like for example, if YouTube had needed to vet every video before it got posted, it simply wouldn't have existed. It would have never gotten off the ground.
Yeah, no, that's certainly the case. That I would think is certainly the case. Okay, so what this bill is basically saying that is if by association anybody connected directly or indirectly with an accusation of a copyright infringement, they can come in and get a court order and then shut down the website completely. That's essentially what this is saying.
Yes, but it actually goes a step further, which is that copyright holders who are making these accusations could serve payment processors with notices that would require them to suspend service within 5 days. So that means that you wouldn't actually have to shut down a site like Etsy. You could simply cut off payments being made to and through them.
Oh my God, I had no idea. All right, what is the status of SOPA?
The status right now is it looks like there might be a vote before the end of the year. So in mid-December is possibly when it could come out of committee. Right now there were hearings earlier this month in committee, and it might come out of committee and for a vote as soon as mid-month.
Do you know which committee it's with right now?
I should, and I probably don't. but I bet it's commerce. I'm sorry, excuse me for not having that on the top of my head.
Oh, wait a moment. I see him here. House Judiciary Committee, okay.
Judiciary, okay.
Yeah, it's now before the House Judiciary Committee. Okay. And it's got the corresponding Senate bill, the Protect IP Act, over in the Senate.
Right.
So essentially, what you just described, this association thing, would constitute a violation under SOPA, and they're saying that they want to make these felonies.
Right now, in SOPA, there aren't provisions for prison time or anything like that. The ramifications are really about free speech. It's about being able to use an accusation of copyright infringement to take huge parts of, huge websites off the internet. It's a problem for small business people, like people who might participate in something like Etsy, say. When big corporations find that small people are, that smaller sites are competing with them. And it's also a problem for speech. One of the things that we have seen with sites that are accused of copyright infringement is that not everything that goes on those sites is infringement. If someone might have posted one music file online illegally, but what sprouted out around that may be discussion of the music, discussion of themes and social issues addressed by the music. This is all protected free speech. It's the way the internet works.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm looking at a summary of the SOPA, and it says the bill would make unauthorized streaming, whatever that means, of copyrighted content a felony. So someone in there is looking at some kind of prison time for somebody. Right.
Those are the streaming provisions, which are part of SOPA, and that I think the big issue around a lot of SOPA is that everything is so vague that it's not clear how it's going to play out. That the definitions that they have in here of what's infringing content, what's a felony, are so vague as to chill people from innovation and trying new things on the internet.
Well, I'll tell you, like, one of the things I notice in this bill is that it gives immunity to the internet service providers if they take action to shut down the websites. And this is reminiscent of what Australia has done. Australia has absolute control of the internet, and the way they have accomplished it is not by trying to regulate the internet. What they're doing is regulating the ISPs.
Yeah.
So it's the ISPs that are doing their dirty work, and heck, we're just doing what government does. And this looks like it's taking a page out of that tactic. Let's go in there and have our dirty work done by the ISPs. And then we'll give them immunity as long as they do what we want.
Yeah, it's one of the interesting things about the internet is free speech is only as strong as the weakest link. So when you communicate on the internet, you need all sorts of things to participate. Your ISP, the domain name server, upstream hosts, web hosts. There are a lot of people make up this chain that is the way the internet works, and you're very right to point out that one of the ways that governments work around this chain of private actors is to put pressure on some of the people in between and try to get them to cave.
I have to say it's an effective tactic. I wish it wasn't, but it really does tend to be effective. Now, it seems as if the online generation has developed an attitude, and maybe I'm wrong on this. I'm willing to be wrong, but it seems that the collective generation has developed an attitude that anyone should be able to download any information regardless of intellectual property rights. As a performer and a composer, I have copyrighted songs and lyrics that I've written. I'd be upset if someone used my work without, compensating me in some form. Why shouldn't we ensure that online users respect copyrights?
Online users really should respect copyright. I mean, you're right that it's an important part of the way that artists and performers and other people make money. This is not about whether artists get paid or not. This is not a system that gets artists paid. I think it's an important part to note that we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need to make sure that we preserve the way that the Internet works, the good, robust free speech part of the Internet, and the innovation part of the Internet, allowing new and different ways for people to create companies where artists can make money, like, say, Etsy, without copyright infringement. There are some common sense ways to cut down on copyright infringement online and to make sure that artists get paid. However, that shouldn't happen at any cost, at the cost of other people's free speech. And as I pointed out, I just don't see how this system gets more artists paid. It just hurts free speech and hurts the way the Internet works.
Well, now let me ask you, on behalf of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and I want to ask this question to the listeners also. This is your question of the day, folks. How would you solve the problem of protecting intellectual property rights on the Internet? And I'll tell you honestly, I don't know the answer, okay? Because I agree with you, Rebecca, we don't want to compromise the freedom of the Internet, but I also am a performing artist, and I can appreciate, the desire to preserve copyrights intact. So let me ask you, from the EFF's position, what's the solution? The workable solution?
It's a number of different layers. There are different ways to go about it. One is, as an example, what YouTube did. YouTube worked with content providers, movie companies and music companies, to come up with a filtering service, so that there was an automatic way to check videos that go up to YouTube to make sure there's no infringing content. And once the flag is triggered, that different things happen. That, some music companies have agreed that if their music is used in a video, then they can put up an ad, say. That actually is something that YouTube innovated, working with different companies to make sure that everybody got their needs met, and turned out to be a new revenue stream for both YouTube and for content companies. There's some problems with the way that the YouTube filters work. Sometimes they overfilter and catch things that are fair uses and other things. But this is an example of how YouTube has come up with one system, and that other companies can come up with other systems working with content companies. Another really big problem is the entertainment industry's dependence on artificial scarcity, and that is a real problem. And there are times when content, is available on DVD, and then the DVD goes away, or it's available for download, and then it's not. These are in the 21st century. People are used to being able to get access to content. They often are happy to pay for it if it's available. The success of iTunes, Netflix, Amazon downloads shows that people are eager to pay for content. The problem is when that content isn't even available for pay. Then people say, "Well, but it's available for free on this website."
You used the phrase, and I'm not familiar with it. Entertainment scarcity.
Entertainment scarcity. The idea, I'll tell you a story that my brother told me a couple years ago, where he was looking for season 3 of Battlestar Galactica. The DVD wasn't for sale yet. It had been available for download through Amazon, but what happened was the company that produced it, and I don't remember who it was, took it off Amazon for download because it wanted to build excitement for the DVD release in a couple months. My brother calls me saying, "Do you have any idea how to get a hold of, Battlestar Galactica season 3? Do you still have it on your DVR?" And I said, "No, I deleted it from my DVR because I had watched it and it was queuing it up in my own way." And he, there's my brother saying, "I have $200 for whoever can give me season 3 of Battlestar Galactica." I mean, he was willing to pay for it, and yet the entertainment industry had created this artificial scarcity for him, and as you pointed out, kids in particular, are extremely sophisticated about where to get content. If we're not allowing people to pay for it, you can see why they get pushed to free services. My brother is also an artist. He didn't want to go to a free service. He didn't do it. But he was pushed to the brink because this was something that he wanted, and he knew he could get it for free. When the free product is better than the paid product, then Hollywood needs to start thinking more creatively.
It's a pretty good summation of the problems involved in it. Let's go back to SOPA for a moment here. Who would decide under this legislation if a violation had actually taken place, deserving of action under SOPA? Where does the responsibility or the authority rest?
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the confusing parts of this legislation. One of the hard parts is that because of the safe harbors that you talked about, encouraging ISPs to react at an accusation in order to protect themselves. They don't have to react at an accusation. They can wait until it goes through the court system, but they're encouraged to act at an accusation to protect themselves. That it almost doesn't matter, because if a site's taken down for several days, maybe it's down at a critical time during an election or something. So it's I'm not exactly sure what the court process for it is, but right now there's a case where a website got taken down during Operation In Our Sights through ICE, the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, which has been doing a lot of this work right now, and they can't even figure out who to complain to. They ended up taking the government to court because they couldn't figure out, when their site was taken down, a site that was declared legal twice in Spain, that the U.S. took it offline. It can't figure out how to even appeal this decision. There's just no way for them to do that.
Well, now, there is a great flaw there, because at least in legal theory, there is supposed to exist a remedy for any alleged violation. Whether you get the remedy or not is another story, but at least in legal theory, there is not supposed to be a violation without a remedy.
It's definitely hard that things are that things are murky around this right now. We believe strongly that you shouldn't take content off the internet unless there's some sort of court oversight.
And let me tell you, there are a couple of pieces. Just in the last week, there was a story, a Russian anchor woman who was doing a story about Obama, and when she said the name President Obama or President Barack Obama, underneath her desk, she gave the finger. Now, she says she was giving the finger to other people in the studio with her, and that very possibly is true. But she's been fired, and the video has been taken down. And there was another one where a bunch of pig thug cops were pepper spraying, innocent protesters over on the West Coast, and it was up, and then suddenly it was taken down, and they said it was due to a copyright something or other by Mr. Thomas something or other. I'm seeing this more often.
You've actually zeroed in on a really interesting copyright problem, which is that no doubt the Russian television station and maybe the person who took the photos at University of California at Davis had copyright in those images. However, under U.S. law, there's something called fair use of copyrighted material. If a piece of copyrighted material is needed for criticism or commentary or the purposes of art or other sort of transformation, it's protected fair use. The images, at UC Davis, you could see how some of those cases of using that images are fair use, criticism and commentary. Fair use is not an easy thing to decide. Courts sometimes struggle over it, but it's an extraordinarily important part of how we discuss the news in the 20th century. If you have a clip, if you're talking about what's happening on a radio show, you might need a clip of that radio show in order to discuss it.
But if I think it might happen, I'll make my own recordings. I'm finding it very, very distressing because this is happening more and more frequently. Rebecca, how do people get in touch?
With the Electronic Frontier Foundation?
Yes.
We're at www.eff.org. What you will find right there on the front page is how to tell your lawmakers how you feel about SOPA. It's really important to let them know that you are against this really dangerous legislation.
All right. My guest has been Rebecca Jeschke of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, www.eff.org. Go get them, folks. Thanks, Rebecca. Good luck.
Thank you.